I never imagined my ordinary life would turn into a battlefield of lies and revenge. I'm a blue-collar guy from Ohio who always believed in hard work, loyalty, and the idea that if you're good to others, they'll be good to you. I had a steady job at a steel fabrication plant, a little house in a quiet town, and a wife I loved with all my heart. For 7 years, I thought we were happy, as much as any hardworking couple could be. I was dead wrong. They say hindsight is 20/20ths. Looking back now, I can pinpoint the exact moments that should have set off alarms. The late nights at the office, the sudden password change on her phone, the way Lisa started paying extra attention to her appearance every Monday morning. She was an administrative assistant at a law firm downtown, and she'd been working closely with some of the firm's big-shot attorneys. I figured she was trying to impress them for a promotion. I was proud of her for wanting to move up. I never suspected one of those lawyers would be the man she'd betray me with. The first real pang of suspicion hit me at the firm's summer barbecue. It was one of those fancy catered events with white tents on a senior partner's sprawling lawn. I remember feeling out of place among the designer suits and cocktail dresses. I came straight from the plant, wearing my cleanest jeans and a button-down shirt that still smelled a bit like metal and machinery. While I nursed a beer by the grill, Lisa was across the yard, laughing a little too hard at something one of the partners said. A tall, silver-haired man stood by her side, his hand resting lightly on her back as they talked. I recognized him from the Christmas party photos she had shown me. Richard Manning, one of the top attorneys at the firm. Married, if I recalled correctly, though I didn't see his wife there. As the evening sun dipped low, I watched Lisa and Richard slip away into the house on the property, supposedly to fetch another bottle of champagne. My gut tightened. 15 minutes passed. When they finally emerged, Lisa's face was flushed and her lipstick looked slightly smudged. Richard followed behind her at a casual distance, straightening his tie. I clenched my jaw so hard I thought I might crack a tooth. I tried to tell myself I was imagining things. Lisa loved me, and maybe she was just networking with her boss. Confronting her based on a hunch would only embarrass both of us in front of her colleagues. So I swallowed my suspicion and forced a smile when she returned to my side, pecked my cheek and said, "Sorry, hun, work stuff. You know how it is." I mumbled something agreeable, but in truth, I didn't know how it was. My work stuff involved welding beams and sweating through my shirt. There were no secret strategy sessions in mansions. On the drive home, I was quiet, my knuckles white on the wheel. Lisa noticed and asked if I was okay, placing her manicured hand on my arm. Her touch usually melted my stress away, but that night I felt myself stiffen. "I'm fine," I lied. She turned to stare out the window at the dark fields whizzing by, and we left it at that. In my heart, a seed of doubt was planted. Summer turned into fall, and life carried on in an uneasy new normal. I tried to ignore my fears, but they festered. I started noticing every little change. Lisa began leaving the house earlier than usual, claiming she wanted to beat traffic or stop for coffee. In the evenings, she'd sigh that she was exhausted and turn away from me in bed more often than not. Our once active sex life dwindled to maybe once a month. I rationalized it. She's stressed, she's busy. It's normal for things to cool down after a few years. But a voice inside whispered, "Something's wrong." One crisp Tuesday in October, that voice became impossible to ignore. Lisa left for work before dawn, kissing my cheek while she thought I was still asleep. Later that morning, I got a text from her. "Working late, big case, don't wait up." I stared at my phone, stomach churning. Working late had become a weekly occurrence, and "don't wait up" She'd never phrased it like that before. Usually, even if she came home late, she'd crawl into bed and whisper sorry. Not this time. I decided I needed to know the truth. That evening, I drove downtown to her office building. I parked across the street and killed the engine, feeling like a thief staking out a target. It felt wrong to spy on my own wife, but I had to know. At 8 p.m., the lights were still on in the firm's top-floor offices. Only a few cars remained in the parking lot. One of them I recognized immediately, a black Mercedes sedan with vanity plates reading "Lawyered," parked in the far corner under a tree. Richard's car. My heart thumped painfully against my ribs as I sank low in my seat. Finally, I saw them emerge together. Lisa and Richard walking side by side out of the office doors. They headed straight for his black Mercedes. I watched from the shadows as he opened the passenger door for her. And before she got in, she pulled him into a long, intimate kiss beneath the parking lot lights. That was it. Proof beyond any doubt. My stomach lurched, but I steadied myself and snapped a few photos of their embrace. They drove off a moment later, her leaning on his shoulder, his hand casually on her knee. Everything I needed to know was confirmed. My wife was sleeping with Richard Manning. My hands were trembling as their car disappeared into the night. The shock hit me first, a cold wave that left me numb. Then came the pain, a searing ache in my chest like a red-hot poker. I couldn't believe this was happening to us. That Lisa, the woman who curled up on the couch with me to watch dumb reality shows, who cried on my shoulder when her dad died, who whispered "I love you" every night, could do this. After the pain came anger. Not a wild explosion, but a cold, growing resolve. I wanted to storm after them, confront them at whatever hotel they were headed to, but some rational part of me held back. If I charged in swinging, I could end up in jail, or at least give them the chance to paint me as the crazy husband. No, if I was going to confront them, it had to be on my terms, with evidence they couldn't deny or explain away. I forced myself to stay put and think. Instead of following, I drove home on autopilot. The house was dark and empty when I stepped inside. I stood in the living room for a long time, just staring at our wedding photo on the mantel. In it, we were beaming, her in a lacy white gown, me in my only suit with a goofy lock of hair over my forehead, because she had mussed it right before the shot. I felt something twist in my chest, a mix of love for the woman I thought I knew and hatred for what she had done. I wanted to smash that photo to shards, but I didn't. Instead, I set it face down on the mantel and made a promise to myself. I was going to make them pay for every ounce of this pain, and I was going to be smart about it. No rash violence, no empty yelling. They thought I was a simple, clueless, blue-collar husband who would either stay in the dark or blow up and then slink away. They were about to find out how wrong they were. I hardly slept that night. I paced through the house until the early hours, scenarios whirling in my mind. Every time I replayed that parking lot kiss, rage flared hot inside me, but I kept remembering, save it for when it counts. I needed concrete proof and a solid plan. If I was going to confront them and come out on top, I had to have all my ducks in a row. The next morning, Wednesday, I called in sick to work. My voice must have sounded rough enough to be convincing. In truth, I was sick with betrayal and the need to do something. With the house to myself, I started gathering whatever evidence I could find. I opened the desk in our spare room where Lisa kept household paperwork. My hands shook as I rifled through the neatly labeled folders. Bills, bank statements, and phone records. She had a company-issued cell phone, but the statements still came addressed to her. I spread out the most recent one. It didn't take long to spot the pattern. The same number appearing repeatedly at odd hours, early morning, late at night, dozens of times. Richard's number. I recognized it from when he'd called our home line once or twice about work events. I snapped photos of the phone bill with my own phone, highlighting each call to that bastard. Digging deeper, I found a small black notebook tucked under some envelopes. It was an old pocket diary she used to use for appointments before switching to her phone's calendar. Flipping through, most pages were blank or held mundane notes, except one. In the section for mid-September, on a Thursday, she had written in her tidy cursive, RM 7 p.m. Hotel Bellman. My jaw tightened. Hotel Bellman was a boutique hotel on the edge of town, known for its privacy. RM could only be Richard Manning. So at least once, she'd met him at a hotel a couple months ago. There were probably more meetings that she hadn't jotted down, but this was solid evidence. I carefully tore out that diary page and set it aside. Next, I powered up our home computer and logged into Lisa's email. She'd saved her password, a small oversight that became my gain. I scanned for Richard's name, sure enough. There were dozens of messages between her and Richard's work address, often sent late at night or on weekends. Most looked work-related at a glance. Meeting agendas, legal brief attachments. But buried in one thread from 2 weeks ago was something that made my blood boil. Lisa had written that she missed him and loved how last night went, and Richard replied that since his wife would be away, he'd book their usual place next week. That was all I needed to see. I forwarded that incriminating email thread to my personal email, then deleted any trace of the forward from her account. For good measure, I printed a hard copy on our home printer. The whir of the printer sounded unnaturally loud in the silent house. Each page it spit out felt like adding a brick to a case I was building. Finally, I grabbed our digital camera from the closet. We had bought it a couple years back for vacations. It had a decent zoom. The very next week, according to that email, they planned another rendezvous. I intended to be there, camera in hand. Photographic evidence would slam the door on any denial. By the time I finished, I had a folder full of evidence. Phone records, the hotel note from her diary, printed emails, and the photos I'd taken of them kissing by his car. I sat at the kitchen table staring at it all, disbelief and fury warring inside me. Less than 24 hours ago, I was a loving husband in a normal life. Now I was compiling a dossier on my wife's affair like a private investigator. It was surreal but oddly empowering. I finally had control of the narrative, at least to some degree. With proof in hand, I could plan my next steps rationally instead of reacting blindly. I knew one thing for certain. I wouldn't be confronting Lisa or Richard until I had every possible advantage lined up. And that began with understanding my legal position. Before any direct confrontation, I sought professional advice. That very afternoon, I made an appointment with a local divorce attorney, Doug Fisher, someone my brother had once mentioned. Sitting in his office under the harsh fluorescence, I laid out the basics. The affair, my evidence, and my desire to come out of this with minimal damage to myself and maximum consequences for them. Doug listened intently, occasionally nodding as he sifted through the photos and printouts I'd brought. His verdict? Ohio is a no-fault divorce state, but proof of adultery can still give me leverage, especially regarding any division of assets and alimony. He noted that since our incomes were similar, Lisa's salary wasn't much higher than my union wage. Alimony wasn't a huge issue either way. But evidence of her spending marital funds on the affair, like those hotel stays, could work in my favor when splitting property. He also pointed out that while I couldn't drag Richard into our divorce proceedings directly, his wife might have her own legal options, like suing for adultery in states that allow it. That planted a seed in my mind about involving Richard's wife. Most importantly, Doug emphasized staying cool. "Don't give them any ammo," he warned. "No violent outbursts, no harassment. Let your evidence and the legal process do the work." I assured him through gritted teeth that I had no intention of letting Richard or Lisa bait me into doing something stupid. We discussed strategy. Gather a bit more evidence if possible, then file for divorce swiftly, citing adultery. We would serve her publicly, something I very much wanted, to maximize her embarrassment. Leaving the lawyer's office as dusk approached, I felt steadier. I had a roadmap, patience, and planning. On the way home, I did something that might seem odd. I pulled into a strip mall parking lot, parked in a quiet corner, and let out a primal yell inside my truck, pounding the steering wheel a few times. It was a brief release of all the fear, hurt, and rage I'd been bottling. Then I sat there in the dark until I could breathe normally again. Once calm, I drove on. It was the last time I would allow myself to lose control. From here on, every move needed to be deliberate. That night, I finally went home to face Lisa, evidence in hand. By now it was late, around 10 p.m., and I was half surprised to find her already home. Perhaps Richard had family obligations that kept their tryst short. I entered the house to see her curled on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, eyes red and puffy. She jumped up as soon as I stepped through the door. "Jack, where have you been?" she asked, voice laced with worry. "I've been calling." She stopped, noticing the cold, hard look on my face. Something in my expression or posture must have betrayed that the jig was up. I shut the door behind me quietly. My heart was pounding, but my voice came out frighteningly calm. "We need to talk, Lisa." She stood there in the dim lamplight, wringing her hands. "Oh, okay," she stammered. "But first, are you all right? You didn't answer your phone, and I—" "Stop," I cut her off. I walked into the living room and set the manila folder of evidence on the coffee table like a judge presenting exhibits. Her eyes flicked to it, then back to me. She didn't know what was inside, but some instinct made her tremble. "Jack," she began, voice small, "I haven't been honest with you." A tear slid down her cheek. "There's something I need to—" "You mean your affair with Richard?" I said flatly. She sucked in a sharp breath, as if I'd slapped her. For a second, the only sound was the ticking of the wall clock. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Her carefully rehearsed confession, or excuse, whatever it was going to be, had been derailed by the fact I already knew. And not only knew, but clearly had proof. I picked up the folder and flipped it open. On top was a glossy photo, one of the ones I'd taken last night of her and Richard kissing by his car. I held it up like the ace of spades. "I went by your office last night," I said, my tone disturbingly conversational. Imagine my surprise seeing my wife wrapped around her boss in the parking lot. Lisa's eyes widened at the photo. Her legs gave out and she sat down hard on the couch. "Jack, I can explain," she whispered. "Explain," I echoed, anger seeping into my voice now. "Please do, explain how this—" I tossed the photo onto her lap, "is somehow not what it looks like." She stared at the image of herself and Richard, caught in 4x6 gloss, and broke into sobs. "It was a mistake," she choked out, burying her face in her hands. "I never meant to hurt you. I'm so sorry, Jack." I let her sob for a moment. My jaw clenched. This wasn't how I pictured confronting her. In my fantasies, I'd been full of righteous fire, not standing here feeling oddly detached. "How long?" I asked quietly. She looked up, mascara starting to smear. "A few months," she admitted. "Since around July, after that firm barbecue, remember? It just happened." "Don't say it just happened," I snapped, a flash of heat breaking through. "You don't accidentally fall onto another man's dick, Lisa. Was it going on at that barbecue? Did you sneak off with him then?" Her lower lip trembled. "It was only a kiss that night, I swear. I was drunk and upset because you left early. He was being sweet, and I messed up. After that, I told myself it would stop, but—" Her voice trailed off. "But it didn't," I finished for her. I threw down the rest of the evidence on the coffee table. Printed emails, phone logs, the diary page, pages scattered in front of her. "So what was last night? The grand finale? Or were you planning to keep this going indefinitely?" She shook her head violently. "No, no. Last night was—" She gulped. "I told him it was over, Jack. I ended it. I was going to tell you everything. I swear on my life, I was going to confess because I couldn't live with the guilt." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Oh, spare me. You ended it because you got caught." I gestured at the array of evidence. "If I hadn't been there with a camera, you'd still be at it." Her eyes roamed over the damning papers. She realized there was no use denying anything. "I don't love him," she said softly. "It was never about that. He paid attention to me, treated me like I was special and exciting. And I was stupid. I was so stupid." "You got that right," I muttered. I felt a surge of anger again, remembering the humiliation of her lies. Did everyone at work know? Were they all laughing behind my back, watching me play the devoted husband while you played around with him? She shook her head. "No, hardly anyone knew, I'm sure. We were careful, mostly." She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "This wasn't about you, Jack. I know it's hard to believe, but I never stopped loving you. That did it." Hearing her try to claim love while looking at concrete proof of her betrayal snapped something in me. "Don't you dare use that word right now," I snarled. I loomed over her, and to her credit, she didn't flinch. She just wept silently. "You threw love in the garbage. You threw me in the garbage. For what? Huh? For a quick thrill with a silver-haired lawyer who flatters you?" She kept repeating, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," but it was becoming noise in my ears. I realized my hands were curled into tight fists at my sides. In that moment, I understood how crimes of passion happen. The urge to grab and shake her, to shout in her face, was so strong I actually had to step back. I took a deep breath, then another. No violence, no losing control, I reminded myself. I was not going to jail over this. I turned away from her, trying to compose myself. On the couch, Lisa reached hesitantly toward me. "Jack, please," she cried. "If you want to yell or even hit me, I understand. I deserve it. But please, let's talk. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. Whatever it takes." I whirled back, startling her into silence. "Fix this," I echoed. "There is no fixing this. Did you think I'd be one of those chumps who works through infidelity? Share you with him in some open marriage garbage? Hell no." Her face crumpled. "I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you. Give me another chance. These last months I was stupid and selfish, and I hate myself for it. But our marriage, 7 years, Jack. Doesn't it mean more than one terrible mistake?" I stared at the woman I had loved, maybe still loved somewhere deep down, and felt an odd calm wash over me. It meant the world to me, I said quietly. And you tossed it away. There's no going back. We're done. She dissolved into heartbroken sobs, repeating my name over and over like a prayer. I felt a pang in my chest, a mix of grief and grim resolve. I had imagined this confrontation going differently, perhaps with me raging and her defensive. But here we were, both broken in our own way. Still, it didn't change what needed to happen. I walked to the front door and opened it. The night air was cool on my flushed skin. I spoke without turning to look at her. I'm leaving tonight. Don't call me. The next time you hear from me, it'll be through a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce. Behind me, I heard her stand. Jack, wait, she pleaded, voice hoarse. Don't do this, please. We can at least talk tomorrow when things calm. If I stay here a minute longer, I might do something we'll both regret, I said, my tone flat. It was true. I was hanging by a thread. Call your lover if you need someone to talk to. Or better yet, think about what you're going to tell his wife, because I fully intend to let her know what's been going on. With that, I stepped outside. Her cries followed me out. I'm sorry, Jack. I love you. I shut the door, got in my truck, and drove off. I didn't take a single thing with me except that folder of evidence. I was too angry to care about clothes or toothbrushes. I headed for a motel on the edge of town, vision blurred by a mix of tears and fury. As I drove, I felt oddly calm. The hardest part, confronting her, was over. Now it was time to execute the real plan, ensuring that she and Richard faced the fallout of their choices in the harshest way possible. I spent that night at a cheap motel, lying on a lumpy mattress with a bottle of whiskey from a nearby gas station. I only managed a few swigs, just enough to dull the adrenaline, and then forced myself to stop. I needed a clear head for what came next. I turned off my phone to block the barrage of calls and texts from Lisa. Let her panic. She was right to. The next morning, I met my lawyer Doug again, as soon as his office opened. I gave him a brief rundown of the confrontation and told him I was ready to proceed. We finalized the divorce paperwork, citing adultery explicitly as the grounds. Ohio may be no fault, but we wanted the accusation on record. Doug also helped me draft a plan. We would file immediately and have Lisa served at her workplace. That part was my request. I wanted maximum shock value. He raised an eyebrow at my vindictiveness, but he followed my wishes. The papers would be ready by Monday. Meanwhile, I had another party to inform, Richard's wife, Cynthia. I had gotten her name and some background from Lisa over the years. She occasionally mentioned Richard's family in passing. A quick online search gave me more. Cynthia Manning, 44, involved in local charity boards, mother of 2 teenage kids. I found their home address in a public property record. With that, I prepared an anonymous package. Inside, I placed copies of a few choice bits of evidence, those hotel receipts and a couple of the more suggestive emails, and a concise, polite letter. Dear Mrs. Manning, I am writing as a concerned individual with information regarding your husband Richard's inappropriate relationship with a colleague named Lisa, my wife. I know this news will be painful, but I believe you have a right to know. Enclosed are some documents that speak for themselves. Please know I am truly sorry to deliver this news in such a manner. I didn't sign it, of course. I mailed it express that same day, knowing she'd receive it by Friday. Over the next few days, a calm, calculating focus settled on me. I moved methodically, separating my finances from our joint accounts, canceling our shared credit card, and moving half the savings into a solo account so Lisa couldn't drain it. My lawyer assured me this was acceptable as long as I didn't conceal the funds. I let my boss know I needed a week off for personal family matters. He must have heard the strain in my voice because he didn't press for details, just told me to take care of myself. Back at the house, which I visited only when I knew Lisa was at work, I changed the locks. I wasn't sure of the legality since it was jointly owned, but I did it anyway for my own peace of mind. I doubted she'd try to return after how we left it, but I wasn't risking an ugly scene or her messing with my remaining stuff. I also retrieved a few more personal items and, as a final petty move, took our wedding album and shoved it in a box in the attic. I couldn't look at it anymore, but I didn't want her to have it either. By Friday, things were in motion. My lawyer filed the divorce petition with the court. That evening, I got a notification the package to Cynthia was delivered. And Lisa, aside from a flurry of tearful voicemails on the first day, which I did not answer, had fallen silent, likely in shock or strategizing her own next steps. I spent much of that weekend envisioning how Monday would play out. If all went according to plan, by lunchtime Monday, everyone at their law firm would know about the affair. I wanted the rumor mill to chew them up. I imagined Richard frantically damage controlling with his wife, if she hadn't already kicked him out, and Lisa utterly mortified as she was served in front of her co-workers. It gave me a grim sense of satisfaction. On Monday morning, I parked my truck a block away from the law office and watched from a distance. Sure enough, around 9:30 a.m., a professional process server in a suit strolled into the building, holding a thick envelope with Lisa's name on it. I didn't witness the moment she got served. He went up the elevator out of sight. But I could picture it. Later, I'd get confirmation of the chaos from a friendly source. That friendly source was someone I least expected, an older secretary named Marjorie who worked at the firm. She'd always been kind to me at holiday parties. Apparently, she found me on Facebook that Monday afternoon and sent me a message. She said she was sorry to hear what happened, and that everyone at the office was stunned. According to her, Lisa had been in a meeting when the server arrived. He calmly handed her the envelope and announced what it was. Lisa opened it, scanned the first lines, and ran out of the conference room in tears. Word spread like wildfire that I had filed for divorce, and the reason was her infidelity with Richard. By lunchtime, rumors were flying around the firm that I had filed for divorce, citing her adultery. Marjorie also mentioned that Richard left the office abruptly around that same time, looking extremely upset. I thanked her for reaching out and closed my laptop, feeling a cold sense of victory. It was only the beginning of their unraveling. That evening, I got the expected phone call from Lisa. I'd left her in the dark for days, and now she had been publicly humiliated, served with divorce papers at work. She must have been an emotional wreck. I hadn't planned to speak to her at all, but something made me pick up this time, perhaps curiosity or a need for closure. She was sobbing. "How could you do that to me at work, Jack?" she managed between cries. "Everyone knows. I've never been so humiliated." I felt a twinge of pity hearing her so broken, but I reminded myself she chose this path. "Good," I replied tersely. "Now you have a small taste of what I felt," she pleaded, alternating between apologies and anger. She said I didn't need to ruin her life out of spite, that we could have handled things privately. That sparked my temper again. I told her this was handling it relatively privately. After all, I hadn't sent the evidence to all her friends, though the thought had crossed my mind. "You blew up our life," I said. "I just made sure it didn't blow up in my face alone." She fell quiet then, except for quiet sniffs. Before hanging up, she said in a small voice, "I know you won't believe it, but I truly am sorry and I truly love you." I know I can't fix it, but I wish I could. There was nothing more to say to that. I ended the call without replying. Surprisingly, I also got a call from Richard that night. I didn't recognize the number. He was using a different phone, perhaps his wife's. I answered out of morbid curiosity. "Jack, it's Richard," he started. I cut him off immediately. "You've got some nerve calling me." He sighed. "I know you're furious. You have every right to be. I want to apologize and to ask if there's any way we can handle this situation without further destruction." By destruction, I knew he meant the damage to him, the gall of this man trying to negotiate after all that. "We're way past that," I told him coldly. "You made your bed. Now lie in it." He pressed on, voice desperate. He admitted his wrongdoing and then, astonishingly, tried to reason that if this got too ugly, no one would win, mentioning things like reputations, money wasted on court, etc. It was almost laughable. Here he was, the man who slept with my wife, talking about minimizing fallout. I let him talk himself out. Then I said, "Richard, the only reason I'm not at your front door with a baseball bat is because I have a better plan to make you pay. So do yourself a favor. Lose my number and get ready for the worst year of your life." Then I hung up on him. I won't lie, that felt damn good. In the days that followed, the emotional roller coaster continued for all of us. I learned through the grapevine, Marjorie again, that Cynthia had indeed kicked Richard out upon reading my package. In fact, Cynthia herself reached out to me via a brief email thanking me for telling her the truth. She said she had suspected something was off, but never imagined it was with someone's husband at the firm. She didn't ask for more details, just wished me strength. I wrote back a short note saying I was sorry for her pain and wishing her well too. It struck me that Cynthia and I, the betrayed spouses, had been unwittingly dragged into this mess together. A part of me felt a profound sadness. Two families destroyed by their selfishness. But another part of me felt validated seeing that destruction play out. They needed to face consequences, not just with me, but in all aspects of their lives. One night, about a week after the initial blow-up, I found myself driving by the house that used to be my home. I don't even know why. I guess I was feeling conflicted and nostalgic. To my surprise, I saw Lisa's car in the driveway. She was apparently staying there alone now. I hadn't been back since the confrontation. Acting on impulse, I parked and went to the door. She answered, eyes red from crying, and for a moment we just stared at each other. I broke the silence. "I came for the rest of my things," I lied. I'd already taken most of it. She let me in silently. As I gathered a few stray tools and personal items, I could feel her hovering, wanting to say something. Finally, as I was about to leave, she blurted out, "I miss you." I closed my eyes. This was one of those emotional twist moments I'd anticipated, where guilt, love, anger, and pain all swirled together. Part of me missed her too, terribly. We had shared 7 years. You can't just shut that off overnight. She stepped closer, reaching as if to touch my arm, but then stopped herself. "I know I have no right to ask," she said, voice trembling, "but do you think someday you can forgive me? Even if you'll never take me back, I hate that you hate me." I looked at her, this woman I had once planned a future with, now broken and remorseful. "I don't know," I answered truthfully. "Maybe someday, but not now. Right now, I can't stand the sight of you." She flinched as if struck. A tear rolled down her cheek. "Fair enough," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Jack." I nodded, biting the inside of my cheek to keep my own emotions in check. Without another word, I turned and walked out. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw her standing in the doorway, shoulders slumped. It hurt. Despite everything, it hurt to see the woman I once loved in such misery. But I reminded myself, she earned this. This pain was the result of her choices. My pain was an innocent man's. Hers was self-inflicted. By the time I got back to my motel room, I had steeled myself again. Feeling sorry for her would only weaken my resolve, and I wasn't done yet. Over the next month, I carried out the final phase of my revenge. The burn-it-all-down moves. Legally, things were proceeding. Lisa, through her attorney, quickly agreed to an out-of-court settlement that was heavily in my favor. She likely wanted to avoid any more exposure of details. I ended up with the house, not that I intended to keep it long, the truck, and the majority of our remaining savings. She walked away with her personal belongings, her car, and a small fraction of the assets. In another life, I might have felt bad about financially wrecking someone I loved. In this one, I felt it was just. Professionally and socially, the fallout for them was massive. Word of the affair spread beyond the firm, through professional circles and acquaintances. In a conservative field like theirs, such scandals are deadly. Richard, once a golden boy partner, found himself marginalized. Clients who heard rumors quietly requested their accounts be handled by others. The firm's managing partners, fearful of their reputation, pushed Richard to resign within weeks. He retired under pressure, effectively ending his career in disgrace. I heard through Cynthia, with whom I stayed in occasional contact, that their teenage kids were furious with him. He was living in a small rented condo and trying to mend fences with his children, who largely refused to see him. Cynthia herself was moving forward efficiently. She filed for divorce in her state, citing adultery, and her lawyer was poised to take Richard to the cleaners. Given their long marriage and his misconduct, she was likely to get a huge share of assets and spousal support. In short, Richard was facing public embarrassment, loss of career, loss of family, and a very expensive divorce. The thought brought a grim smile to my face. As for Lisa, the firm made no official statement, but Marjorie told me the atmosphere became icy for her. Having an affair with a partner was a serious breach of professional decorum. She was given the option to quietly resign, which she did about 2 weeks after everything came out. She packed up her desk and slipped away without fanfare. She also had to endure the whispers and judgment of colleagues who had once been friends. Her social circle shrank overnight. Some friends sided with me when they found out the story. Others distanced themselves from her scandal. Even her own parents, I learned, were so ashamed that they refused to let her stay with them. She ended up moving to a small apartment 2 towns over, alone. In a matter of weeks, those two had gone from respected, successful professionals to pariahs in our small community. It was exactly what I intended: social disgrace, financial blows, and utter isolation. They still had each other, I suppose, but I doubted that was much comfort. In fact, I heard a rumor, unconfirmed but satisfying if true, that the stress and guilt between them caused their shaky post-affair relationship to implode. Apparently, they weren't even seeing each other by the time the dust settled. It's fitting, I thought, that in destroying their marriages, they also destroyed whatever fantasy they had of being together. Poetic justice. One late afternoon, I drove by the law firm after having signed some final divorce documents with Doug. Work was letting out. I caught a glimpse of Richard coming down the steps alone, looking 10 years older than when I last saw him. His hair seemed grayer, his posture stooped. As he walked to his car, a different car. I suspect the Mercedes was sold or taken by his wife. A couple of his ex-colleagues passed by without even acknowledging him. Once he'd commanded respect there. Now he was a ghost. I didn't let him see me. I was content observing from a distance. In that moment, watching him shuffle off in disgrace, I felt something unexpected. Not triumph, but a kind of hollow relief. The war was over. I'd won. But like any war, the landscape was littered with wreckage. When my divorce from Lisa became final, I found myself standing outside the courthouse with papers in hand, a free man in the eyes of the law. There was no celebration, no high five. I just breathed in and out, feeling a chapter close. My mom had asked if I wanted to come stay with my parents for a while, back in my hometown in Ohio. They were worried about me. I told them I'd think about it. Truthfully, though, I didn't want to be around anyone who'd fuss or ask too many questions. I needed space to process everything. Meanwhile, the house, the one I'd fought to keep purely out of spite, I found I had no desire to live in anymore. I put it on the market and sold it within a couple of months, splitting a small portion of the proceeds with Lisa as agreed. With that money and what I had in savings, I decided to truly burn the last remnants of my old life and start fresh somewhere new. On a cool April morning, I stood at the bus station with a duffel bag at my feet. I had quit my job at the steel plant. I figured I could find the same work elsewhere when I was ready. For now, I just wanted to get away, to clear my head. I bought a one-way bus ticket heading west. Maybe I'd visit an old army buddy in Colorado, or drive out to the coast. I had enough money from selling the house and the divorce settlement to take a few months off without worry. As I waited for the Greyhound that would kick off my journey, I sipped a coffee and watched the sunrise over the rooftops. For the first time in a long time, I felt a faint sense of peace. My phone buzzed with a text from Cynthia, wishing me good luck on my journey. I thanked her and smiled, knowing we both were moving on with our lives. In that moment, I realized I felt something else I hadn't felt in ages. Hope. Not the blind optimism of a man ignorant of life's cruelties, but the hard-earned hope of a survivor. I knew now that even when your world burns down, you can sift through the ashes and find a way forward. My future was uncertain, but it was mine, free of lies, and largely free of anger. The scorched earth of my old life could finally cool. When the bus rolled in, I boarded, took a window seat, and didn't look back at the town as we pulled away. My old life was behind me, burned to the ground. Ahead, the horizon was wide open. As the miles slipped by, I felt a cautious sense of peace, even a spark of optimism. If I ever ran into Lisa or Richard again, I realized I wouldn't feel anger or hate, just indifference. They were in my past, and I was done with them. As the bus rumbled on, I allowed myself a small smile. I had walked through fire and survived. I was free, and that was victory enough.